Okay, you can start.
Good morning, sir and class. Hope you all enjoy learning about complex organization. So let me introduce my team. We have Sherry Fraser, Lana Marie Belgrove, and myself, Teresa Chance.
Good day. Welcome to our presentation, Understanding Complex Organizations. The team, hi, I am Teresa Jones, and I will be presenting on groups and organizations, organizational leadership, organizational structures, organizational mission, vision, and core values.
Hello, I am Sherry Fraser, and I will be presenting on organizational culture, organizational networks, and life cycle of organizations.
Hi, I'm Lana Maria Bell. I will be presenting today on multicultural organizational development, virtuality and the impact of technology, and new paradigm leadership in conventional paradigm politics. So let's begin.
So, just in case if you wanted to put a face with the names, hope that little video cleared up for you. Seeing that we all have formally introduced ourselves, let's get straight into today's presentation. Groups and organization. When dealing with this, groups and organization, it might be a bit difficult to differentiate between the two. Therefore, with the use of the four W's and the H, we can clearly see how these two differ. So if you look at the table, you will recognize that there are similarities and differences between the two. So firstly, the similarity, as you all could see, is purpose. So any group or any organization must exist for a purpose. And then you will see continuous interaction is a critical factor for any organization since involvement is what keeps the organization or group alive. But there is even more contrasting factors like size. So a small to medium organization contains 3+ participants, while a large organization or an organization must have at least 20+ participants. Also, groups have simple structures since they are usually made up of people, while organizations have complex structure because they are made up of groups. For example, COSTAT. So there are different faculties that makes up the college. In fact, when it comes to proximity, a group can be close, but an organization can range from sharing a building which is near or far being virtual. And some virtual organizations that you might know will be Nike, Reebok, and Puma, just to name a few. Organization as complex structures. Organizations are also systems which can define as an environment in which each interaction between members produce outcomes that affect each individual's and subsequently interactions and outcomes. This simply means as more people and groups within the organization interacts, the more complicated the organization becomes because everything affects everything else. Which will bring us to the 9 Laws of God by Calvin Kelly. This describes the life of the organization, both in and out. So we look at the different systems. 1. Distribute being. The essence of an organization exists in all its members. So therefore, the organization exists through its members. Control from bottom up. Empower members at all levels of the organization. Cultivate increased returns. Focus on what your organization does well and do it even better. So if your organization does charity well, you'll do that even better. Growing by chunking. Organization grow not one piece at a time, but in branches. Maximizing the fringes. Honor your creative members and their ideas, even if it's really out there. So just because somebody have a wild idea doesn't mean you mustn't listen to them. At least hear them out. Honor your errors. It is only through trial and error that learning happens. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just go right ahead with it. Pursue no optimum. There is no one right answer to complex problems. There are only many partial solutions. Seek persistence. Disequilibrium brings energy into disequilibrium. Organization. Change changes itself. Change leads to more change, which change the initial change. Then I have a quick question for everyone. Why is leadership needed within an organization? Anyone wants to answer that question?
Because without leadership, everybody will be doing their own thing, I guess.
Very, very good. Thank you very much for your input. So the answer is part of that, as well as leadership, is needed within an organization to help groups work together to accomplish a specific purpose. As mentioned earlier, organizations are made up of groups which exist for a particular purpose. Therefore, leadership helps these groups to work together to accomplish a specific purpose, which leads us to relational leadership model. So in this model, you recognize it's a usable framework for leaders can use to accomplish their organization purpose by being inclusive, empowering, ethical, and process oriented while helping all of the organization's members to be purposeful and work towards positive purposes. Leaders and members can work together successfully to accomplish significant change. Organizational structures. Now, all organizations exist for some purpose. Therefore, their structure is designed to do their day-to-day operation easier. Under this heading, we will look at four distinctive organizational structures. So we have number one, traditional organizational structure, the inverted organizational structure, the web organizational structure, and the non-hierarchical organizational structure. So firstly, we'll look at the traditional. Max Weber created this classic bureaucratic model of organization, which features a hierarchical structure with the power, authority, responsibility for leading organization is at the top, with the president and flows downwards in the structure throughout the other officers and committee chairs. Members within the structure have little power, authority, or responsibility. They usually follow orders as directed by the head of the department. Most of governmental organizations function under this model. Then we have the inverted organizational structure, which is the traditional pyramid but flipped upside down so that members are at the top and the president is at the bottom. This reconceptualization means that work of the president is to be support the efforts of the other officers and committee chairs so they can better meet the needs and wishes of members. Some example of this, we have the lattice, or it's called the manager-less organization. Thirdly, we have the web organizational structure by Hessinger. This structure functions similarly to a spider web, with its center representing the purpose of the organization or the leader of the organization. And the outer edges is where new members connect to the structure. This structure works well in an environment filled with change as the pattern is continually being built, stretched, altered, modified, and transformed. Furthermore, Hessinger 1995 outlines 6 important processes that defines this structure. 1. Open communication. Communication is open and it happens across and among all levels of the organization. 2. Distribution of information and expertise. Because the web structure, information and expertise are easily distributed all over the web. 3. Power distribution. The strand of the web distributes the power throughout the network. so that those who come up with creative ideas have both the responsibility and the authority to follow through with the implementation of them. 4. Reorganization. This is easy because the web can tighten its center or becomes loosened, since there is less emphasis on who or what holds any position or power. 5. Point of connection. The strand radiating out from the leader provides point of connection to the outside environment and allows new members to latch on easily. 6. Reinvents itself consistently. This organization consistently engage in the process of trial and error, as spoken earlier. Therefore, process that are successfully continues and strengthen the entire web, whereas those that are not changes into something new. Moreover, the implementation of change is easily accomplished because communication and decision-making power are distributed throughout the web. And finally, we will look at the non-hierarchical organizational structure. This type of organizational structure, power and authority are shared throughout its membership. Because of this, there is no levels and decision making is often done by consensus. One factor of this structure is the leadership rules and are shared by all. So we have one particular organization called Zappos, which is an online shoes and clothing organization company, and they recently renovated or changed their organizational structure from being hierarchical and to being non-hierarchical. So it's whatever is working in this time, you just change the suit. Also, most startup tech companies function in this same manner. This organizational structure is also known as a flat organization. So then we will look at a video that's going to speak about the purpose of vision, mission, and core values.
When we talk about the future, strategy becomes a dynamic concept, which allows top managers to define goals and objectives for the future and outline how these goals and objectives will be achieved. A great way to formalize a company's purposes, goals, and values is to have formal mission and vision statements. Both are related to the main reason a company exists and help stakeholders understand and keep that reason in mind. Okay, so the mission statement addresses the question, why do we exist? Or what is the fundamental reason for our organization's existence? And the vision statement describes the desired future position of the company and answers the questions, what do we want to achieve in the future? And who do we want to become? When trying to define the vision statement, we should include specific goals and objectives. Goals help companies define what they want to achieve, while objectives are the specific actions and measures for attaining these goals. By setting goals, managers commit themselves to a concrete course of action that would allow them to accomplish the company's vision. Goals can target different areas like growth, profitability, retention, efficiency, or customer service. Usually, goals are expressed as a percentage. When considering financials, a company's goal could be to increase revenue and decrease overheads, which is stated in the following way. Increase revenue by 10% and decrease overheads by 5% in 2017. An example of an objective that will help you achieve a 10% increase of sales is acquiring 5 new customers every month. Reducing overheads can be achieved by finding new and less expensive office premises, or maybe outsourcing activities. Both are specific objectives that might allow a firm to reduce its overhead by 5%. Another important question companies should answer is, how are we going to behave and what do we believe in? Maximizing profit is important, but it is also important to uphold certain values and principles. This is why most organizations have a set of values they stay behind. The role of this statement is to define the firm's values and place constraints on how the organization pursues its goals. This can be important for the talented individuals being recruited by the company. Usually, they're not only interested in large compensation packages, but also want to work for an employer that is socially responsible and believes in integrity and business ethics. Right. Obviously, it is not hard to find a firm's mission, vision, and values. All stakeholders can access these statements easily. Just open a company's website and click around. You can locate them in no time. All right, it's time for a few practical examples. Let's look at the way some large corporations have stated their mission, vision, and value statements. Some firms are very specific when defining their mission statements and clearly express why the firm exists and what kind of services it offers. To build the web's most convenient, secure, cost-effective payment solution, PayPal. To accelerate the advent of sustainable transport by bringing compelling mass-market electric cars to market as soon as possible, Tesla. These are the missions of PayPal and Tesla. Both companies have a mission statement that is laser-focused, a statement that isn't ambiguous, is to the point, and indicates the company's main purpose. But that's not always the case. The mission statements of other companies show the business strategy their organization follows. The two examples you see here show that Walmart and IKEA follow a cost leadership business strategy. We save people money so they can live better. Walmart. At IKEA, our vision is to create a better everyday life for the many people. Our business idea supports this vision by offering a wide range of well-designed, functional home furnishing products at prices so low that as many people as possible will be able to afford them. There is a third type of mission statement as well that is polar to what we've seen so far. Some companies are too vague in their mission statements and do not present the market scope of the business. To be a company that inspires and fulfills your curiosity. Sony. It is our mission to continue to authoritatively provide access to diverse services to stay relevant in tomorrow's world. Guess. Not very clear, right? The same reasoning applies to selecting the vision statement. It needs to express what the company wants to achieve. The best vision statements are concise, clear, and inspirational. Here are examples of clear and memorable vision statements. To provide access to the world's information in one click. Google. To create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. LinkedIn. And here's an example of a vision statement that is too general and hard to remember. Our vision serves as the framework for our roadmap and guides every aspect of our business by describing what we need to accomplish in order to continue achieving sustainable quality growth. Coca-Cola. Okay, that covers mission and vision statements. Now, values. Let's look at the values of Facebook. These are the guiding principles for the company's employees. The company values are impactful, dynamic, bold, open, and socially responsible behavior. These are the 5 values that Facebook and its employees should stand for. Defining these principles helps the company communicate to its employees what the organization stands behind and how it intends to do business. It is interesting to see how different companies understand the world, how they want to behave in it, and what they want to achieve. This is what we can learn by reading a firm's mission, vision, and value statements.
Okay, so that comes to the end of my part. However, I want you all to be a little interactive in this new section. All right, so who wants to be a millionaire? All right, we know it's Christmas time, so we're trying to get some money, and the COVID situation kind of put people out of jobs. So I hope this little game will help you get some money. But since we're in a leadership and ethics class, I must have a disclaimer. I am not providing anyone with any cash once they get the correct answer. Now let's begin. So what organizational structure was designed by Max Weber? Anyone wants to answer that question? Anyone? A, B, C, or D? $500?
I thought you said I wasn't paying.
No, I'm not. I'm paying blessing. You could choose anyone. Anyone want to choose? Okay. But
It's E.
It's A. All right.
E.
Thank you very much. That's a C. That's correct. Good job, sir. Traditional organizational structure. All right,
Listen,
and that.
hold on a second. I'm going to deduct marks for people not participating in this quiz, okay?
All right. So now the
So
stakes are
that's nothing
rising.
if we don't know the answer, but okay.
That means you wasn't listening.
All right. So we're going to go up to $1,000 worth in blessing now. All right. Let me see who's listening to the last video that now showed. Question number 2. We save people's money so that they can live better. Whose mission statement is this? Walmart, PayPal, Tesla, or IKEA? Just pick
I'll go
any
with
one of.
Walmart because I really don't know.
All right, let's see. And you're right, Walmart. You received $1,000 worth in blessings. All right, guys, this comes to the end of my part of presentation. So I'm handing you over to Miss Sherry Fraser.
Good morning, class. Good job, Teresa. I will now be sharing on the following topics: organizational culture, organizational networks, and life cycle of organizations. At the end of my share, the objectives would have been we would have a better understanding of what is culture, models of organizational culture, the different levels and frameworks. We'd also have an understanding of organizational networks, and we'd also have a better understanding of the life cycles of the organizations. So first we begin with the organizational cultures. Now, when you're hearing the word culture, and I would like to ask the class to be very interactive here, what word comes to mind when you hear the word culture? What do you think of?
How people operate.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Shania. So culture in a nutshell is basically the way we do things around here. Many people believe that organizations are so powerful and influential that they take on a culture of their own. So we're going to look a little deeper into definitions of culture. In its most basic form, organizational culture is a group of internal values and behaviors in an organization. It includes experiences, ways of thinking, beliefs, and future expectations. Culture can be reflected in an organization's uniform, the way they lay out their offices, how they interact with their customers and their various publics, their recruitment and hiring practices, even how they refer to each other and what they say. Every organization does things in their own way, and some in a very distinctive way that can be identified both internally and externally. So I'm going to ask, when we think of certain organizations, such as Digital, what comes to mind? How do you view Digital? It could be color, it could be anything.
I view them as having inconsistent service.
Okay, well, culture obviously can be good or bad. So when we view Digital, we immediately think of correctly service because they are a service provider. When we see the color red, Digital can come to mind among other organizations. Also, community, social, and cultural responsibility are some of the trademarks of companies such as Digital. Similarly, when we think of Custard, the culture of Custard is very student-focused, and that is visual in the way the classrooms are laid out in contrast to larger universities where a classroom may fit over 1,000 students. Custard classrooms on average fits maybe 30 to 35. So that gives you a very student-focused culture. Right, so we're moving on to understanding a little more into the different levels of culture. Now, organizations do not adopt a culture in a single day, and in fact learn from past experiences and start practicing it every day, thus forming the culture of that workplace. Edgar Schein proposed a model of organizational culture as a pattern of shared basic assumptions that was learned by a group as it solved its problems of external adaptation and internal integration. This model has worked well enough to be considered valid and therefore to be taught to new members as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel in relation to those problems. Schein proposes the culture has 3 different levels. And when we look at the slide, we will go through these 3 levels. At the top of the slide, we have artifacts. Artifacts was described as the most visible level, and that can include structures and processes. And this is essentially how we do things. Artifacts can be found through the architecture and interior arrangements, through physical space and how it is allocated. It can be shown in the manner of dressing, as previously mentioned, and even in mementos and trophies awarded on chosen occasions. Next, we will look at espoused values. These would be the strategies, goals, and philosophies of an organization, or that the organization claims to embrace. It is why we do the things we do. The values help the organizational members classify situations and actions as either undesirable or desirable. For example, let's say an office has a large supply of stationaries. Based on the values instilled in that organization, theft will be very undesirable. So even if someone were to just go with an additional pen laying around, the other members would view this as undesirable because they have a value of honesty and transparency and anti-theft. However, if it's a more lax culture where it's just a pen, then no one would see a problem with this. And these would be the espoused values of an organization. We'll now look at the third level, which is assumptions and beliefs. At the final deepest level are the underlying assumption. And these are the beliefs, perceptions, thoughts, and feelings that are assumed to be true by members of the organizations. These underlying assumptions drives the value and actions of the organization. And this is essentially what people think and how they feel about something. Example, time and how it is defined and measured. Most organizations in Trinidad may start work at 8 a.m. So there's a strong emphasis on arrive. Everyone believes that we should arrive at work at 8 a.m. and start our day. Space is another assumption and how it is allotted. It is very unusual to find a CEO desk among the regular employees. So space and how it is allotted is another assumption where members assume that the CEO is placed at the third floor or higher floor. Assumptions about the right way for people to relate with each other, the appropriate ways to distribute power and responsibilities. And now I'll present Edgar Schein, who pioneered these various levels. And Edgar Schein would have said that managing culture is one of the most important aspects of leadership. The only thing of real importance that leaders do is to create and manage culture. If you do not manage culture, it manages you. And you may not even be aware of the extent to which this is happening. We will now look at another framework offered by Terence Deal and Alan Kennedy in regards to organizational culture. Deal and Kennedy offered a framework from which to examine organizational cultures, and they stress the importance of the organization's values, heroes, rites and rituals, and communication networks. For example, in an organization, as I would have mentioned in my earlier slide, members may have a high value of time management. So showing up on time is the norm. Timeliness will then serve as a guide to new hires as well as other members in the organization. Heroes. Whenever you think of Amazon, you're obviously going to think of its founder, Jeff Bezos. But even more so, you're going to think of his story in bringing Amazon from a couple $1,000s to a multi-billionaire organization. So Jeff Bezos, even when he's long gone, will still be viewed as a hero every time Amazon is mentioned. And even in regular organizations, there will be an employee who pioneered some great way for efficiency. And each time that particular tool is utilized, he would be viewed as a hero in this setting. Rites and rituals. Most organizations have either an Employee of the Month feature, which recognizes and rewards productivity, attendance, and this is to motivate other staff. Their rituals may be their new hire orientation. They may have long service awards for members who have served 20 years, 25 years, etc. They may also have birthday clubs that seeks to boost the morale of the members. The communication networks. This is the channel and chains of command utilized in both formal and informal settings. What channels are used in a formal setting? Perhaps communication must come from the top and forwarded through managers and supervisors to the ground level. If it's an informal setting, perhaps they value communication in as simple as just a memo circulating. We'll now look at characters identified by Deal and Kennedy. As we discussed the communication network, Deal and Kennedy went a step further by identifying a variety of characters within the organization and how each character contributed to the organization. I will outline the 7 characters they identified. And while I'm going through each character, perhaps you can pause and think if you might know someone who this relates to, or maybe it's even yourself, who you are in the organization that you're in. Firstly, we have the storytellers. And storytellers, they share or interpret information based on their perception, whether it is true or not. And in our local culture, we have a lot of storytellers. Secondly, we have the priests. The priests are those who guard the values of the organization and also keep the membership of the organization together. Typically, when you have an organization where someone might have served for 30 years, they might have been there from the ground up, they tend to have very sentimental attachments to the organization, and they seek to upkeep the values set from the very beginning. So a lot of times when newcomers coming, they may have that as a challenge because they do not want to shake the norm or go too far from their values. We then have the whisperers. These work behind the scene and have power because of their close relationship with the organization leadership. Then we have the gossips. Gossips can provide detailed information about what is going on within the organization. Sometimes the information is factual and sometimes it is not. Administrative support sources. I'm certain if you've ever been to an interview or you pay attention to a lot of interview videos or techniques, people tend to say a common statement is make friends with your receptionist, because the receptionist and administrative support sources, they tend to have access to very important information. So they can tell members what is really going on in an organization. Unlike the gossips and storytellers, they aren't basing their communication on hearsay or untruths, but they truly know what is going on. Next, we have the spies. Spies are loyal to the leadership of the organization and provide information to them about what is happening. And as we come to the last one, if you're versed in politics or you pay attention to local politics, this particular one would be familiar. Cabals. The cabals are groups of 2 or more people. The alliance are usually kept a secret, and their purpose in joining together is to advance themselves within an organization. Example again, in a political organization, there may be cabals. I now will show you a short video. Please pay in mind that the video does not have an audio, so you'll really have to read off the screen, and it's a short video that sort of gives you an idea of everything that we just discussed. Okay, so we will wrap up the organizational culture with the Hofstede's cultural dimensions. With the Bowman and Deal's frame descriptions and differences. Bowman and Deal identified 4 frame models. This would include structural model, human resource model, political, and symbolic. And they offered this view putting the focus on these 4 processes. In the structural view, processes such as organizational charts, roles, and job descriptions, as shared earlier by Teresa, is where the emphasis would be placed on the organization. The human resource frame emphasizes the people in the organization, their feelings, what motivates them, and what keeps them together. In the political frame, they operate from the perspective that there will always be scarcity of resources. So organizations are inevitably in conflict with each other and must operate in ways such as forming coalitions, which will enable them to gain more. Finally, we have the symbolic frame, and this frame focuses on the ceremonies, stories, and heroes that help define the organization and reveal or reflect its values. As mentioned earlier, Jeff Bezos will always be that symbolic figure with Amazon. Likewise, with Apple, it will always be associated with its founder, Steve Jobs. Paying attention to how these different frames are operating within your organization can provide clues to why some parts may be doing well while others are not. We will now look at the final part of the organizational culture with the Hofstede's cultural dimensions. Here we have a diagram of Gert Hofstede's cultural dimensions. Through his studies of societies around the world, he recognized and proposed that people differ in 5 broad dimensions. On my slide, there's a 6th one, but we're focusing on just 5 broad dimensions. And these are power distance index, the uncertainty avoidance index, individualism versus collectivism, masculinity, and long-term orientation. In the power distance index, it's really the degree to which a society supports equality or inequality. And I will use countries as a way of helping you further understand this. The United States of America will be identified as a culture or country that supports equality, whereas China will be a more hierarchical country as they put the focus on rank. The uncertainty of avoidance index is really how open to change a culture is versus if they prefer routines. It's the extent to which change is viewed as a threat and how it is tolerated. Individualism. Individualism is the we versus the I. How much individual work is emphasized over collective action. Again, I'll use the United States here. United States put much emphasis on individuality versus countries such as India. They focus on the collective action and collectivism. Masculinity. The degree to which traditional male values are embraced over female values. And often you find most of the Eastern cultures, they hold the traditional male values as higher than the female values. So they put the focus on assertiveness, heroism, competitiveness. Short-term versus long-term or long-term orientation. And this is how much a long-term perspective is favored over a short-term perspective. How futuristic is the views and goals of the company versus the trying to remain traditional or trying to remain the same. Hofstede's dimensions are comparable to Project Globe, which is the Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness. And this study would have identified 9 dimensions of culture that differed from country to country. This would have caused a spectrum from assertiveness, future orientation, gender differentiation, uncertainty avoidance, power distance, institutional emphasis on collectivism versus individualism, in-group collectivism, performance orientation, and human orientation. It is key that you understand the sense of the culture of an organization because it provides insight into how your organization really operates. In some organizations, if it ain't broke, break it. This can define how the culture works. Whereas in other organizations, if it ain't broke, don't worry about it. Maybe the way things operate. The life within organization can be negatively affected by the organizational culture. The more norms you strongly share, the more resist changing them. And I will use our local public service as an example. In some organizations, Friday is the unofficial start to the weekend. So there's little to no productivity on a Friday. However, if a new hire enters this organization who may be type A, as we learned about in a previous lecture, this person would have a high value on working hard, efficiency, and productivity. So when they enter an environment that has a very laid back or laissez-faire approach, they find it hard to ascribe to. Additionally, if the mission, vision, and values of an organization has always been one of professionalism and rigidity, introducing such a lax Friday culture may be met with resistance and vice versa. It is very important that we understand that trying to change the mission, vision, and values of an organization without paying attention to changing the culture can be met with resistance. And we'll now look at another short video that gives us an overview on cultural differences and how the cultural dimensions work. Shown is how especially important it is for organizations and by extension leaders as they enter emerging markets and global markets to understand the cultural dimensions. And now, as I wrap up the organizational cultures, I have a little quiz. So my one is a true or false. So I'm going to ask the 3 levels of culture are artifacts, mission, and assumptions and belief. Is this true or false? For $500.
No, they're not paying no money. I know.
Take a chance, you never know.
Is it true?
Anyone else want to try? Give it a try. There's only 2 answers. Okay, so the answer is false. It is artifacts, espoused values, and assumptions and beliefs. Okay, so we now move on to organizational networks. And I'll just let it be known that there will be a question at the end of it, a true or false question. Organizational...
Make sure.
Sorry? All right, so organizational networks. The significance and relevance of networks has increased in recent years, and as such has received much attention. On the slide, I would have listed some of the key names attributed to contributions on networks. Jessica Lipnack and Jeffrey Stamps would have provided us with a definition for what is network. Barabasi and Watts, they would have contributed significantly to identifying how everything is connected and defining networks. And lastly, the notions of 6 degrees of separation would have been defined or pioneered by Stanley Milgram. But to cover all of this, let's first understand what is network. Would anyone like to give it a shot? What do you think network is?
Establishing communication and links between people and organizations.
That is correct. We're right on close enough. So we look at the definition of what is network according to Jessica Lipnack and Jeffrey Stamps. And they define network as where disparate group of people and groups link to work together based on common purposes. Example, when Custard assigns us group work. Some of us may be from the same program, so we already know each other, and some will be from different programs, and we're coming together to work towards a common purpose, which is accomplishing our group work. Why is network important? Networks provide the chance to bring together a wide range of individuals. The network either will address a specific issue, such as getting an A on a group project or group assignment, or it may be work on an ongoing concern, such as coming together to form a student body. The key issues in the formation of a network is that they work together and have a common purpose or goal. There's agreement on the network's purpose, creating as many links as possible among members of the network, and making sure that multiple leaders exist within the network. Now, Stanley Milgram would have come about to this idea that anyone on the planet is connected to any other person through a chain of acquaintances. He says you are just 6 introductions away from anyone on the planet. And again, the example I will use is the group work. Perhaps I may have never worked with Shania before, but if we are put in a group, I then am acquainted to her, and by extension, I may become acquainted with friends of Shania. Shania may in turn be acquainted with with people that are acquainted with myself, hereby strengthening our acquaintances or strengthening our network as we are now connecting to other persons through this chain of acquaintances. And now we move on to our question. So as we wrap up organizational network, a network is where a disparate group of people and group links link to work together based on common purposes. Is this true or false? For $1,000.
It's true.
Correct. A network is where a disparate group of people and group link to work together based on common purposes, such as achieving an A on a group assignment. We now wrap up my presentation with the topic life cycles of organization. A critical point in the success of any organization is its ability to adapt to change. Changing conditions, changing membership, and changing leadership. The ability to adapt enables an organization to renew itself and maintain its vibrancy or relevance. Adaptability and planning for longevity is a critical yet often overlooked aspect of leadership. It is important that an organization make plans for what happens next in the organization. Who will be recruited into the organization? Who will be identified, groomed, and mentored for future leadership? For there to be longevity, there must be generativity. And generativity refers to making your mark on the world by caring for others, as well as creating and accomplishing things that make the world a better place, or striving to create or nurture things that will outlast you. John W. Gardner and Ishak Adiz present the concept of lives of organization. And when we look at the slide, Gardner applied the term infancy and maturity. And this is to differentiate the evolving of organizations from their early lives, or when they just begun, to their mature stages. Adiz, however, went a bit further. He applied additional and more detailed stages, which range from courtship, infancy, go-go, adolescence, prime, stability, aristocracy, early bureaucracy, and finally death. It sounds almost like our stages as well. So it's applicable to both our lives and the organization. Now, this model is very important as it focuses on how an entire organization will change over time. When an organization is in its infancy, it is often more flexible and willing to try new things and have a faster response time to challenges. Yet, they may spend much more time to accomplish very little. On the other side, as a company matures, they become more orderly, tried and tested processes and systems are in place, yet they may lose their flexibility present in infancy. An organization needs to consistently ask itself 2 questions. What have we accomplished recently? And how does the accomplishment reflect or support the organization's mission? Leaders must identify and describe significant accomplishments that they have helped the organization accomplish. And now we move on to an example. And I have used Massey. I will also allude to Custard. Now, Massey, when they first started, as the slide would indicate, would have seemed like a typical grocery store. However, in order to get to that stability cycle, Massey would have needed to adapt and adjust with changing times. So as the need for convenience grew with both male and female in the home working, customers want an easier way to shop. With the pandemic that we are going through, Massey curbside offering is just perfect for customers not wishing to interact or who just simply needs to pick up items and leave. Had they not done that or offered this service, they could have significantly impacted their growth. Additionally, shoppers now want rewards for participating in your organization. Massey, in turn, offered a loyalty or rewards card. And this is going to help them to stay in the stability cycle and continue to see longevity in the organization. Custard would have started or we would be more familiar with Custard being a nursing program. In order to remain competitive with other arising schools and universities, Custard opened their platform to offer much more program, a more diverse amount of program, enabling them to remain competitive, relevant, and to endure some stability as well. And this brings me to the end of my presentation, and I will ask my final question. When an organization is in its infancy, it is often inflexible, orderly, and spends less time accomplishing tasks. Is this true or false? For $1,500.
False.
And you are absolutely correct. An organization in its infancy is often flexible, it is less orderly, and spends more. Sorry, it is false. It is in its infancy, the organization is flexible, they are not as orderly, and they definitely spend more time accomplishing tasks. Thank you. I will now introduce you to my colleague, Lana Maria.
Thank you very much, Sherry. Thanks, Teresa. Great job. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, class. Everyone hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Right.
Yes.
So we're going to continue discussing complex organizations, and I will start by addressing change. So in the words of American inventor and businessman Charles Kettering, the world hates change, yet it is the only thing that has brought us progress. Change is inevitable, and we must embrace and welcome change in order for progress to take place. So we will start by watching a short video on change agents.
Modern organizations face constantly varying market conditions, customer demands, technologies, input costs, and competition. They must adapt to these shifting forces to avoid being eaten up. Change management is managing the impact that these crucial adaptations can have on an organization's people. 4 typical responses to change are the critic who opposes the change, the victim who panics, the bystander who ignores the change, and the navigator who's empowered to work with changing circumstances. The challenge for managers is to help people become navigators. Here's some things that we know that help this happen. Number 1, communicate the threat of not changing. Number 2, where possible, involve your team in decision making. Number 3, minimize uncertainty. Number 4, celebrate successes in moving towards the goal. Number 5, keep explaining why we're changing. Remember that when there's an information vacuum, people often assume that managers are plotting terrible things. So number 6, be as transparent as possible. To summarize, organizations must continually adapt in order to survive. To create change navigators, communicate the threat, involve your team, minimize uncertainty, celebrate positive shifts, and be as transparent as possible.
So which are you in the organization that you are either working with or the leader of? Are you the critic? Do you oppose changes that are taking place? Are you the victim? Do you panic due to the uncertainty that change brings? Are you the bystander? Are you even bothered with what is taking place? Or are you the navigator? Does change empower you and inspire you to work, which encourages progress? Anyone? Leah?
Not sure. It could be a mixture of a couple, to be honest.
Okay. And that's quite possible, because based on the situation and based on the change, your response would vary. So now we're going to talk about the larger organizations. In larger, more complex organizations, leaders are faced with all of the above personalities, and they have to learn how to manage them and how to deal with them. This can sometimes prove to be frustrating and a bit of a challenge. According to Armour and Hales in their 1990 study, one way to approach this organizational transformation is through the concept of multicultural organizational development. This focus places emphasis on diversity and social justice. It requires commitment from members of all cultural and social groups and may exist within the organization. Oppression blocks inclusive involvement of all members. The relational leadership model stresses on diversity, empowerment, and inclusion. Can you imagine how things would run in your home, how things would run in the company you're working with, or if you have your own business, if everyone felt included and empowered by what they were doing and the contributions that they've made? We would get a lot more out of members of the organization if they felt that way. Multicultural organizational development shows the organization transitioning and moving from a monocultural perspective to a compliant and non-discriminatory perspective, and then finally evolving into a multicultural perspective. The monocultural society sees things as running smoothly. Everything is doing well and we are in a harmonious environment. While a multicultural society sees things as needing change because of the amount of conflict that takes place, because of the varying personalities and the amount of diversity. So as seen in the video, we are all very different. Diversity is not new or complicated, but sometimes it appears or it is made to appear to be both. In the organizational context, diversity appears to have rapidly increased in years, which is attributed to a number of factors. Similarly, the concept of inclusion does not need to be fared as complicated, as individuals simply want to be allowed to be given the opportunity to work and to be the best version of themselves. So as the slide says, we're discussing diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Diversity management initiatives. They used to inform inclusion efforts, begin training, assist in creating open dialogue. Because inclusion is really important. As we said before, if people feel welcomed and they feel comfortable and they feel included, they are going to work. But inclusion is not only on an individual level, but in the organization, you have to focus on the individual and make them feel welcome and feel comfortable so that they can put their efforts into the organizational level. Or you can go directly on an organizational level, but they're working hand in hand. Inclusion involves teamwork, offering stability, engaging the members of staff as well as the other leaders in the organization, respecting each other and management, supporting each other and supporting the organization. It is important we learn to understand, respect, and work well with others, especially those with very strong personalities and views that may differ from yours. The intention is to make the environment as comfortable as possible, where people feel free and at ease to work. So, based on diversity and inclusion, we have a couple true or false questions that I'd like you to take a shot at. There is no monetary prize, just the bragging rights that you got it correct. So, diversity is a new phenomenon which emerged in the last 20 years. Is that true or false? Riaz?
False.
Correct. Diversity appears to seem as if it's a new thing because of how much emphasis is being placed on it, but it has been around for many, many, many years. Number two, inclusion is solely concerned with helping employees who do not belong or feel that they do not belong. Janelle?
I would say true.
Okay. So unfortunately, that is false. because we don't want to only focus on the people that don't feel as if they belong. We want to focus on the people that are all part of the organization. When you place too much emphasis on the people that don't belong, you start to neglect the people that are already there. And we want everybody to get that kind of inclusive feeling. Number 3, organizations should primarily be concerned with inclusion at an individual level. Teresa?
False.
Correct. So organizations should be concerned with inclusion on an individual level as well as on an organizational level because it goes hand in hand. Number 4, an individual's diversity impacts how they perceive inclusion. I'll leave this one open to anyone.
True.
Well, correct. Yes, because based on how you perceive inclusion, you are going to feel differently based on what the organization does. So the more inclusive we try to make, the more diverse everyone, the more inclusive we try to make them feel based on their personal perspective, they would all feel welcomed, or they should. And number 5, diversity and inclusion present different benefits, so they should be dealt with separately. Anyone?
False.
Correct. Diversity and inclusion, even though they present different benefits, they should be dealt with together. They have to be, they go hand in hand. And so you work together in order to get the best possible result. So very good. We're moving on now to learning organizations. According to Watkins and Marsick 1993 and other theorists, learning organizations are those which have the capacity to grow, to change, and to develop in order to adapt to the challenges in our ever-changing environment. In learning organizations, several of the frameworks are intertwined and interrelated. Some of these modules are personal mastery. This is individuals doing the best possible job. Each member in an organization has skills and abilities that could be utilized to make the organization better. And leaders are responsible for identifying members' strengths and weaknesses and working together with them to ensure that they get the best skills, the necessary skills to be as effective as they possibly can, as well as to be prepared for the future. When members feel appreciated, empowered, and skilled, they feel better about themselves, they perform better, and the organization in turn benefits. So it's not only that the person is benefiting, but the organization is benefiting. Next, we have mental models. These are assumptions that people make about the various aspects of the world. These models are sometimes a bit difficult to grasp and change. So what do you think about when you hear the words leader, conflict, diversity, or even meeting? Many times it's negative thoughts. These models must be changed in order for any real change to take place in the organization. We must also compare our mental models with those of the organization to see if they are aligned. Because if our models are aligned with those of the organization, false assumptions that lead to conflicts could be limited, they could be minimized and possibly even eradicated. Next, we're moving on to shared vision. Shared vision is the idea that the mission, vision, and purpose of the organization are shared by all. So you see, we continue talking now about mission and vision as previously discussed in the presentation. Shared vision and common purpose are important to ensure empowerment. Members in complex organizations can be empowered with high mastery, but without a shared vision, we would all be working really hard, but heading in different directions. And these are the things that lead to conflict. Team learning. Team learning involves learning how to communicate, how to make decisions, as well as learning how to disagree. Science concept of personal mastery as an individual must be supplemented with learning as a team, learning as an organization, and learning as a society. Team learning forces us to look at leadership as an ongoing process as opposed to just the end result. Team leaders, like team members, must be constantly engaged with each other and be willing to learn new approaches and new methods. So as we talk about approaches, we're going to now talk about the systematic approach. So a systematic approach, or thinking systematically, involves accepting and sharing responsibility, whether things are succeeding or failing. There is no blame game. Instead, members look at themselves, assess the contribution that they made, or lack thereof. So they need to think about how many times have you attempted to blame someone for something that you should. One theorist describes this learning disability as the enemy is out there. It's where we think everyone is against us. We're looking to point the finger at everyone as opposed to looking in the mirror and seeing that some of the problems may be us. In order to get things done in a systematic approach and help us accept responsibility as we go along the steps, we are required to work as a team, because teamwork, it creates the reality of the system and the organization. So first, we must set the stage, establish a case for change, establish the vision, and build the capacity to lead change. Then we must attempt to change the organization. Communicate and engage your employees. Design new processes, systems, and behavior. Execute the projected plans. When we're executing the projected plans, now we're going into the transition process, where we are adopting these newly processed plans and systems, these newly designed systems, and we are easing off or trying to stop the old behavior that we would have exhibited from the previous system. And then finally, we are now running the organization. We are going to sustain the key elements of this new organization. We're going to review the things that we have been doing. We're learning from the feedback of the members of the organization as well as the leaders. Because remember, it's a teamwork effort. We're not working on our own. So we're going to review and we're going to learn from the feedback, and we're going to make the necessary corrections and continuously make improvements as we go along, because that's how progress works. So now we're going to discuss virtuality and the impact of technology. It is crucial for organizations to understand the role and impact of technology. Virtual teams and organizations are a growing trend, especially now with the COVID-19 pandemic that we're going through. According to Charles Handy 1996 publication, organizations that do not need to have all the people or sometimes any of the people in one place in order to deliver their service is considered a virtual organization. So the organization exists, you just can't see it. It has now become a network versus an actual office. Can you think of ways of how this has become an even greater reality? So for a lot of us, we no longer work every day. We use platforms such as Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams to host meetings, conduct training sessions, sometimes meet with clients and customers, conduct interviews. There are so many things we're using the internet and these virtual platforms for now. The more separated in terms of location, culture, and time that a team is, the more virtual they are considered. At the time of this publication, and as well as Hardy 1996 publications, the CRN Beta in 2013, there was no COVID-19 pandemic. However, they anticipated that trust was going to be a big part of virtuality, meaning it would have been an issue because people are no longer seeing each other face to face. They are no longer meeting and relating and working together as a unit in person. And so you find you need to encourage them to trust that the other person is doing what they are supposed to be doing, while you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, in order to ensure that the wheels continue to turn and things continue to get done. They proposed that more emphasis needed to be placed on maintaining a common purpose among the members. So now we're not working together. I'm not seeing you. I haven't seen you in days, but we are still working on the same goal. And so they encourage leaders to encourage this kind of thinking with the staff. This is not the only anticipated change with the increase in virtuality. Flatter organizations are becoming more and more popular as the hierarchy previously used is decreasing. And in some cases, it's actually becoming non-existent. Organizations are now being built on the members who have to believe and trust each other. This involves members of all levels as opposed to just leaders and decision makers. Do you think they were right? Have you seen any changes in your organization or in the hierarchy as to how things are done? Anyone?
Nope.
No? Okay, so then you're still operating in a conventional paradigm by chance, Evelyn? They're still using the traditional methods?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
That's the public service all around.
All right. Okay. Well, I want to say that, well, I also work in a government organization, and I want to say that we are actually shifting, because we do lectures in my section, and recently I would have done a lecture virtually to the police youth club. So they had all of the students join the Zoom, and we would have lectured to them and did an actual physical demonstration on what we were lecturing about. So I am seeing that there are some agencies that are taking it, but I do understand the challenge that the public service faces. Anybody else? Anybody seeing changes in their organizations? No? Okay. All right. So now we're going to look at a video that gives some insight into the changes that are taking place in the organization with the introduction of virtuality.
There is something going on in the world of work today. Some kind of a evolution that's forcing organizations to think differently about what it means to be an employee or a manager, and even what it means to actually work. There are 5 trends that are causing this evolution to happen. 5 trends that are forcing organizations to challenge everything they know about work. These 5 trends are globalization, mobility, millennials and changing demographics, new behaviors, and technology. Globalization is causing the world to become like one giant city. The language that you speak, the culture that you subscribe to, the currency that you transact in, and where you are physically located are all starting to matter much less. This means that organizations can tap into talent anywhere in the world. Mobility is allowing us to stay connected to people and information anytime and anywhere and on any device. This means that work is no longer a place you go to, it's something that you carry with you in your pocket wherever you are. Millennials are expected to comprise 50% of the workforce by 2020 and 75% of the workforce by 2025. Millennials are digital natives that expect and want to work in ways that reflect the year we live in. Most people live in 2015, but work at companies that operate like they are in 1975. Although millennials are driving enormous organizational change, it's important to remember that the future employee is anyone that is changing their behavior and mindset to adapt to the changing workforce. This means it doesn't matter if that person is 22 or 62. New behaviors are rapidly entering our organizations. For example, we are all comfortable living a more public life. We share our thoughts in blogs, post reviews on Yelp, have our entire professional history on LinkedIn, share pictures on Instagram, rant on Twitter, and engage in open conversations on Facebook. In fact, virtually every aspect of business behavior has changed, including the way we share, communicate, collaborate, teach, learn, find information, access technology, and create content. This is forcing organizations to fundamentally rethink and reimagine the way we work. Technologies such as big data, wearable devices, collaboration platforms, the Internet of Things, and cloud computing are enabling us to work in new ways while keeping us more engaged and productive. In the future of work, technology is the central nervous system of the organization that enables everything else to function. Together, these 5 trends, combined with an unprecedented war for talent, is forcing organizations to shift their mentality from creating a place where they assume employees need to work there to creating an environment where employees want to work there. When we think about the future of work, the organizations that can most effectively make this shift from need to want are the ones who will be able to attract and retain top talent. This means that if your organization doesn't think about and plan for the future of work, then your organization will have no future.
So we see the changes that are taking place in the organizations at present and what we're going to expect in the future with the introduction of virtuality. We need to understand that there need to be changes in the leaders as well, because now, in addition to the general characteristics of a good leader, there are going to be some things that they need to also be doing because we are in an e-team environment. So Kisla identifies some of the special attributes that an e-leader would have. E-leaders are now tasked with leading organizations virtually. virtually without that face-to-face interaction. So some of the attributes they need to be incredibly curious. They need to be eager to learn, lifelong learners, revel in complexity and ambiguity, because now this is on uncharted territory for some. So there are going to be a lot of doubts. They need to be courageous, because there are things you're going to need to do and need to try for the first time because it's new. And they need to be able to build and retain talent. And now that we know some of the characteristics of the e-leader, I want to highlight some of the roles of the e-leader. Right? So these characteristics that we're going to highlight now, they are going to help e-leaders lead effective e-teams and e-organizations. Enhancing cohesion. They need to nurture trust, promote the sharing of ideas and information. They need to moderate team conflicts. They need to facilitate team coordination and integration, as well as develop social and human capital. Some of us may already belong to virtual organizations, but we have not been part of and think we haven't been part of the virtual experience. So, for example, COSTAT, we have now gone online. We have online classes, fully online classes, as well as webinars where they offer programs, lectures, information, advice. Everything we're getting now, we're getting online through COSTAT. Banking. A lot of us have already started online banking. You can do anything online for banking. Applying for a loan, paying your school fees, transferring funds, anything you want to do. Government offices. Some of them have started transitioning. So the passport office, you can make the appointment online now. Your driver's permit, you're now making an appointment. It's no longer walking in off the street. You make an appointment, select your date for your test or for your learners, whatever transaction, it's all being done online. Entertainment, we are now partying virtually. So recently there was the 1 yard benefit concert where they would have had artists performing. You make donations. Even if you don't make a donation, you get to participate. You make donations and artists are performing online. People are partying at home, liming, having their beverages, as well as we have DJs like Elon and Private Ryan having parties online for their followers. And then finally, in some of your places of employment, as we said, you're into Zoom meetings, conferences, and virtual lectures. The impact of technology cannot be overstated. We now could communicate with anyone, anytime, anywhere. We readily share information and attend events. For most of us, this is normal. However, there are still traditional cultures and organizations. What do we do when we're trapped in a conventional paradigm culture? So Evelyn, these would be good advice for you. Share what you know. Share what you know with other leaders, team members, and anyone who's willing to listen. When this is done, two things are going to happen. Firstly, you will learn the information better. You would be able to understand the procedures better. And secondly, you may find like-minded persons like yourself with whom you could connect, engage ideas, learn something from, teach something too. So it's important to share what you know, because there are people who are actually ignorant to it, and so hence the reason they're not willing to change. 2, accept personal responsibility. Accept responsibility for finding ways to use the information that is learned, as opposed to making excuses such as, my company doesn't have this kind of technology, my boss wouldn't allow me to do this. We have to now start looking past that and finding ways to use the information. Next, we want you to be positive, because it's like a salmon swimming upstream. You want to try new stuff, but you're in an organization or an environment where they aren't willing. So we want you to be positive. Maintain a positive outlook and try to find areas that are off limits that you could utilize the information and utilize what you're learning. And then continue to try new things. Even if in small ways, continue to try new things. So in closing, I have a couple of questions. Feel free to answer, share your opinion, or maybe even share an experience. Can you think of any other ways that organizations will change and how differently they will operate in the near future? Anyone? Sir?
Probably with the further advancements of technology and basically eliminating the need for the human aspect of them, of like jobs then.
Yes. I think that is very, very close, that they are going to start downsizing, because they're going to say we no longer need all of this stuff. You know, so that human element may eventually disappear from certain organizations who didn't believe that they could have run without so many staff members. Correct. Number 2, do you think more face-to-face communication is better for an organization? Or you think that this virtual world is workable?
I think it's important to have the face-to-face communication. There's a art in having more human connection and more understanding when you have a face-to-face connection, because a lot of things could be lost in translation when you talk to a computer screen. You lose the personalization of having a face-to-face communication with somebody.
I agree, totally, I agree that face-to-face interaction, the human nature needs that interaction, that face-to-face communication. And as you said, things do get lost in translation. There is no emotion or no tone in your text, unless of course you're using caps or bold to kind of give emphasis. And then thirdly, at what point does having access to all this technology and information become overwhelming? Does it even become overwhelming to some?
I think for sure it becomes overwhelming when there isn't a process in place to take a break or have control over the hours that you are logged on to the computer. So I think organizations need to be more aware that we are human and humans cannot function in front of a laptop or a screen for 8 hours straight. There needs to be some sort of detachment from the screen or from looking at the screen. And by doing that, it would become more manageable for humans at least. So that's when it becomes overwhelming, when it's a continuous time of looking at the screen and trying to remain or stay focused.
Okay, understood and agreed as well. So hence the reason we are wrapping up, so you're not spending too much time on the screen. But I just want to weigh in on something there, Shabira. What about millennials? The amount of time they spend on the screen, they are literally accustomed to it. We have children as long as 2 and 3 using the internet and knowing how to operate an iPad and these kinds of things. You think it becomes overwhelming for them, or it is just for persons like myself who may be a little bit older and again had to transition into technology as compared to young people who are in technology from the get-go?
I
No, I
think
don't think so.
psychologically they become dependent, and that's not how I guess human nature should work. So I think although we're not seeing it as a direct effect of being overwhelming, I think psychologically they create that dependence on technology and digital media, and that in itself can become something that could pose a problem later on because they interaction of things they wouldn't be able to understand.
All right,
I think it more depends upon the purpose of what you're putting your attention into the device for. If the attention that you're putting in the device was work related or learning related, then your stress levels tend to rise rapidly as you come across things that you have to puzzle your way through it. But if you're using it for relaxation, let's say you're playing a game or you're chatting with friends, then the interaction becomes more pleasurable as opposed to stressful. So what happens there is the amount of time that you're putting into the technology that is stress, there's a high stress quotient to it, is a problem that we have to face. When I sit in front of my computer and I'm working, it can become very stressful. In fact, that was something that we were discussing yesterday in our staff meeting. The amount of time that people were putting in to FaceTime on the thing, we actually have to schedule time to take breaks to make sure that we have enough time to relax and do something other than work, because believe it or not, people are working more now than they were when they were working in physical environments, because all you need to do is to get off your bed and you're in the office already. You understand? So the gap between your home life and your work life has become so intermingled that it's creating dramatic problems with people's ability to distinguish between the time they need to take for their personal stuff as opposed to their their work-related stuff, and that is causing work-life balance to go kind of haywire. And to students, kind of, we were talking about this yesterday, as I said, students are kind of contributing to that in our lives as lecturers, because I'm probably one of the few lecturers that have given out my phone number. So I get calls and messages at all hours of the day and night trying to deal with their issues. And a lot of problems that comes up is when do I cut off? You understand what I mean? So that whole technology, it becomes overwhelming if you let it. But you have to discipline yourself to say, okay, at certain days and times, that's it. I'm cutting off, and regardless of who says what, I need to take some time for me.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for your contributions, everyone. We just have the conclusion, and thank you very much for listening in today and for your ideas and feedback.
Mission, vision, and core values are extremely important in any organization, more so in complex organizations. Virtual organizations have become the new normal, and we encourage you to embrace the changes that will come as leaders and as members in your organization. By being inclusive, empowering, and process-oriented, organizations will encourage its members to take an active role in the life of the organization. By being ethical, members can hold each other at a higher standard, and it is only when this vision and common purpose is truly shared by the entire membership that an organization can reach its full potential and purposeful. Organizational life should not be an endless series of meetings. There can and should be excitement there. We hope you find it.
Thank you very much.
All right, are there any questions that anybody wants to ask? All right, so I'm gonna pause the recording now.